Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Angelica Robles, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. I'm delighted to introduce you today, Angelica Robles. She's a former undercover agent, author, and film producer, and she currently lives in Texas with her family. Angelica, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So, Angelica, before we dive into the topic of joy, tell us more about yourself, your background on a personal side, on the professional side.
So I am a former undercover agent. I did undercover work for the government for 2 years, and then I became an interrogator for 17 years. So I was kind of like a profiler, but more on the psychology side. Really, I was just asking questions. And I am an award-winning best-selling author, and I'm also an executive producer, a mindset coach, and I just got published in Forbes. I'm very, very blessed.
So tell us about your years working with the government and being an investigator. Was that a source of immense joy for you? And how did you actually even pursue such a career?
It was not joyful. For sure, it was not joyful. I think I chose my career based on my pain as an adolescent. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago. I grew up in Cicero. It was a very violent place and, low income, Hispanic neighborhood, lots of gang activity, lots of cartel activity, just violence. And at the time, I was 15 years old. I was dating my high school sweetheart, and his sister was murdered. It ended up being one of the most heinous crimes in Chicago history. So with that having happened, it really affected me. And I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of angst. And I chose to go work for the government because I wanted to know how somebody can do such horrible things to somebody in that manner and take their life away in that manner. And so I feel like my path into the government was really based out of fear and out of anger. It was definitely not out of joy. So that's how I ended up in the government.
And what were the key takeaways from that experience? Because I can certainly understand the motivations that brought you to work into that domain. What have you learned from the many years that you were an investigator?
I learned compassion. For one, I learned patience. I learned the ability to listen. At the end of the day, I do believe that people just want to be heard. And whether you're a criminal, whether you're not, whether you're just a regular person, everybody wants to be heard. And I think the biggest takeaway was having compassion for others and really being neutral in this space, because it's very easy to hate somebody. It's very easy to be angered at somebody or feel that somebody's life should be taken away because they took a life. So I think the biggest takeaway was I was able to learn forgiveness and I was able to learn compassion, which is something that a lot of us don't learn.
And that was actually, all this experience was the inspiration for your book. Tell us more about that.
So the book is a really interesting story. I've said this story so many times and it never gets old, let me tell you. So when COVID hit, I was traveling a lot. I was going to different penitentiaries all over the US to interrogate, terrorists, criminals, drug dealers, all that good stuff. And because we couldn't fly, all of that was stopped. And so I went on a podcast, Mark Wilkinson, and he's out of London, and he interviewed me. And his publishing company, which was Hasmark International Company, reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in writing the book about my life. And I had thought about writing a book about my life for so many years, but because of fear of the government, I just kind of put it in the back burner. But then it was COVID, the world was shutting down, what else could go wrong? And so I went ahead and I wrote my book. And I wrote the book in 3 weeks. And I know that sounds astonishing, but I always tell people the reason why I wrote it so quickly was because it was almost like a cleanse for me. I was getting rid of all this energy and all these stories and pain that I had inside me. So the more that I wrote, the easier that I was getting out of this energy and all these stories in my mind. And so really it was a catharsis of me writing this book. So that's why I wrote it in 3 weeks. So don't get it twisted. Writing a book is not that simple, but yeah. I got it done in 3 weeks.
And what a beautiful way to release the negative energy, as you were saying, and the negative emotions that maybe were just bottled up through the many experiences that you've been exposed to. I know that your book basically is now evolving into a film, and you're now a film producer. So tell us more about that journey. And are you now on a journey where you actually experience more joy on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. I tell people life's fulfillment is being of service to others. It's not the cars and the boats and the rings and the money. It's not that. It's really being of service to others. So yeah, so my book became an international bestseller, and then it won an award. And then I had the privilege and the honor to be put on Natasha Graciano's stage, and she catapulted my speaking career. And from that instance, I was able to meet other film producers and executives over in Hollywood. And my story is crazy. For those that have not read the book, go read the book, go listen to the Audible, and then circle back, because it's a lot. It's a very, very heavy book. There's a lot of stuff in the book that you probably will need to process. But fortunately, the story was so compelling that it did land me a Hollywood movie deal. So Gold Tree Films will be producing and putting together this amazing film. So, and then we just released the name of it to Forbes. So the name of it is Veritas.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tell us more about that important moment that created that acceleration towards the possibility to create your movie. And I know you've shared the story in previous conversations, but can you share it with our audience, please? Because it took a lot of guts and courage to do what you do. And it's when we actually take those courageous steps that often lead us to incredible places in our lives. So please share the story on how you got on that important stage.
So I was sitting at home, just little old me. And so Natasha Graciano, for those that don't know who she is one of the biggest motivational women speakers in the world. She came out as best motivational speaker 40 under 40 in Forbes. Very powerful woman. And I've been following her for a long time. So I was just sitting at home and I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and send her a DM on Instagram. What's the worst that can happen is she doesn't read it. And so I went ahead and sent it. I was very intentional in my communication with her. I said to her, hey, I've been watching you. I admire you. I seen your growth and I seen how you're changing so many lives. I gave her my link and I gave her my information to my website. And I said, hey, I'm an author. I have this wonderful story and I want to be just like you. And she responded. Talk about manifestation, right? And setting off into existence this just energy, right? She responded within like 5 minutes. And it was her. At first, I thought it was maybe her assistant, people like that. I think she's got like 10 million followers. I'm not even sure, 18 million. So she responds, and she responded with a voice message. So I knew that it was her. And she says, I read your story. I went on your website. You're incredible. I need you in LA. So this was maybe Tuesday. And she needed me in LA the following Thursday. And she said, I need you to come to LA, bring your book, and I'm going to put you on my stage. And literally, that's what happened. I came to LA. I brought my book. I brought all my stuff. And sure enough, she put me on her stage. She introduced me and I got to share my story at the Sable Theater in Beverly Hills.
And where are you now in terms of the production of the film? Tell us more about that.
So right now we're in the beginning stages. So obviously we have a name. We do have a list of actors that we have allocated that we would really like to contract. And because of the writer's strike, for those that know what's going on in Hollywood, we have a writer's strike and then there's also an actor's strike. So that could have put a little damper into our production. And so right now we are picking out writers who are going to be doing the script, but because they are going through that writer's strike, we're kind of on hold right now. So we are looking at some Oscar-winning, Emmy-winning writers that will be doing the script for the movie. It's like groundwork from zero up. Securing investors and all that. Doing a movie and formulating it and putting it together is a whole crazy process. I'm so privileged to be part of it because I know nothing about the industry, but I'll let you know when I find out because I am executive producer of the project. So
And when you wrote your book, did you already imagine it, turning it into a movie?
I did, and I tell this to people. I was very intentional in my writing, and I was very strategic in what I wanted to share and what I didn't want to share, because I went with the intention of turning it into a movie. And obviously there's a sequel to it. I am working on book 2. The book 1 ends, kind of leaves you hanging, and then book 2 picks up where book 1 left. So yes, I was very intentional and I was very strategic in my approach to writing the book, which I think it's something that all authors that are aspiring to do that should definitely look into and consider.
When you're looking back at your life and how it has evolved in the recent past, did you ever imagine when you began your career that it will actually be what it is today?
That's a great question. I didn't imagine it, but I dreamt it, because that's two different things, right? Dreaming is almost like I want it, but I don't know if it's a possibility. And imagining it is you're thinking about it, but there's for sure not happening. Or it's not there. Imagination is not there. It doesn't exist. Whereas dreaming, there's a possibility that it can come to fruition. So I think deep down inside, I knew that I was meant for more. I knew that I wanted to do more and I wanted to be more. And I remember when I told my mom, I'm not going to med school. I'm going to go work for the government. She was like, oh my goodness, she was praying for me. And I think that's another big lesson that I learned is I wanted to do something for me and not really for my parents or for anybody else. I always thought that I was going to do great things and big things. So I was always in that realm.
And now you're a parent of 2 beautiful kids. Tell us about how you are now inspiring them to live their dreams and build their skills and their strengths.
With my kids, and I would say they're probably my biggest joy, because I see them and I see how they're evolving, and I'm raising them to be fully self-expressed with no boundaries and no barriers, and not having problems with thinking about fear of judgment. I think my kids they're just little humans that are growing into these extraordinary, little people. For me, I think they see what I'm doing. I don't think they grasp fully what I do. I think my daughter, maybe she's 7, and she goes to school and she's like, my mom is a best-selling author and my mom used to talk to terrorists. And of course I get invited to the school to do the career day, and everybody was like, oh my God, your mother is an author. And so I think she's kind of understanding that I wrote a book and it became a bestseller, and now we're making a movie. And I think my 5-year-old is kind of like, yeah, my mom writes books.
So you said that they're currently your biggest source of joy.
Yes, they're just my fuel. They're my fuel to life. And, it's like I'm accountable to them. And it's such a big weight, right? And it's such a big fuel to my fire, because everything I do with their inspiration. To touch, move, and inspire other people, and to try to touch, move, and inspire them.
And does the inspiration go beyond, if you wish, your kids and so on? Tell us more a little bit about that. And how has your impact through the work that you do today shifted? And how has that transformed your capacity to experience more joy?
That is a great question. So, we all go through trauma. We all go through trials and tribulations. And a lot of us, I feel, we get stuck in the past. We get stuck in what happened and we make it mean certain things, and it hinders our growth. And so for me, being able to just let go of the past, let go of the trauma and everything that I've been through, and really restore myself and recreate yourself. And I tell this to people all the time. You are able to recreate yourself however many times you wish. There is no set time. There is no set way. And the biggest inspiration for me with this whole process has been really letting go of the past, learning to forgive, and really just embracing that trauma and pain is a part of growth. And it's just been great, because now I get to teach other people how to let go of their past, how to forgive themselves and others, and really build a life that they really love. And I think that's been my biggest motivator is I really love to touch, move, and inspire people to live a completely fulfilling life without anything hindering their growth.
And I know you're doing also some incredible things in terms of philanthropy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So I had been involved with Cherish Our Children International for over 10 years. I did fundraising for them. I think one year we fundraised about $150,000. So there's just skills that you pick up along the way. So fundraising is obviously one of them. And now I'm really am doing a lot more work with the kids from the border. And so that's kind of my new passion. I'm really shifting gears towards that. It's something that's there and a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but there's a lot of immigrant children that are being left untaken care of in the border. And so now I'm shifting really my expertise and really all of my power and anything that I can possibly send that way to learning more about that population and what's going on in the border.
And how do you find the strengths and the resilience to do so many wonderful things, show up, in a wonderful way for your kids, engage in this new adventure as a film producer and so on? Are there specific techniques or practices that you can share?
So the first thing is mindset. I always tell people the way that you move in life is all about point of view, your point of view, nobody else's point of view. You get to choose your emotions. And a lot of people feel that their emotions are guarded or their emotions are dictated by others. And the reality is, we have control of our emotions. And whenever you decide that you are going to live a fulfilling life, it just happens. Because you make a choice that this is how you're going to live your life, not based on anybody's critiques or judgments. And for me, it has been my number one priority to live my life the way that I like to live it and to not have any constraints from anybody's judgment or what they may say. Because when you get to this level, and you know this too, people are going to say what they're going to say. They're always going to say bad things about you. They're going to say good things about you. But for some reason, the bad things just seem to stick and hurt a little bit. And so for me, we all have resilience. We all have it. And the biggest takeaway for me was being able to just accept the past, process it, and then move forward. And this is in my signature speech, The Power of Forgiveness, which Forbes published, is that the past is not thinking about us. So why are we thinking about the past?
And everything you've just shared is so powerful indeed. And often it's this obsession with the past, what we did or didn't do, or what we said or did say, our regrets, our anxiety about the future that hinders our ability even to think clearly and embrace a positive mindset to begin building a brighter and a better future for ourselves, for our family, for our community and this world, and just finding more joy. So if we can all implement a lot of the advice that you've shared, it would be truly transformational for our society. And I know that you do a lot of Ironmans and you've been very, very active as well. Has that also been a source of mental power, if you wish? And share more a little bit about what you've done in terms of these specific competitions.
Yes. And let me tell you, the gym is my therapy. Everybody goes and sits in front of a therapist. The gym is my therapy. So before I had children, I was involved in Ironmans. For those that don't know, Ironman is the longest triathlon that somebody can humanly possibly do. It's 2.5-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a marathon at the end. So us triathletes say a marathon is our cool down for, those runners. And so I did 2 of those. And then I also qualified and competed in Escape from Alcatraz. So Escape from Alcatraz is, you jump off of a boat off of Alcatraz in San Francisco into that cold water and you swim to the shore in hopes that you don't die. And it's one of the most treacherous waters in the world. And it's also the coldest. I want to say it's like 48 degrees, and you have to qualify for this race. So if you can't swim, they're going to let you drown. Like, you have to sign a waiver that if you go down, they're not going to go pull you out because the water is very treacherous. And I tell people the easiest way to explain how it is in that water is imagine swimming inside a washing machine. That's what it is. And so I did that. I did a lot of, triathlons. I did a lot of marathons. When I was 6 months pregnant with my daughter, I did 2 half marathons in Yellowstone and Yosemite Park. And there's pictures of me running with this belly in elevation in the mountains. And so for me, physical activity really gets all the endorphins going, and it just makes you feel happy, makes you feel good about yourself. And so staying active has really been my therapy. So after I stopped doing triathlons, I had my kids, and being on a bike for 6 hours was just not feasible. I decided to do bodybuilding. So I do bodybuilding now, and I'm a NPC wellness competitor. And so for those that don't know, we lift weights and we get on stage to be judged. So in these tiny, tiny bikinis.
You certainly have a sense for adventure. I love that. So tell us how we could collectively create a more joyful world. I know you've shared some tips and insights. What should we all do collectively to create a more loving and kind and joyful world?
I think it all starts with us first, right? Our self-love and our self-growth and our self-development. I think it starts with us first, because in order to give to others, you need to be able to give to yourself. You need to love on yourself first before you can project the energy out. And so for me, I always talk about self-love. Self-love is a priority, because once you have that self-love, you're able to turn it around and give it to others. And the joy that people get from helping others and being of service to others really is a joy. I think there was a chart that some Harvard studies had done, and it said, time, and I think it was like effort of things that bring people joy. And there was some stuff on there that was just very minimal and just magnificent, like hugging a dog or having the sun hit your face, meditate, volunteering, very small things, grounding, which is, putting your bare feet in the ground and grass and just getting the energy from the earth. And it's just these little things that really bring joy to your body, to your soul, to your brain, because ultimately is our brain that feels happiness and feels joy. So I always tell people this: happiness is a state of being, because you can be happy and choose to be happy, but joy is not permanent. Joy comes and goes. So joy is almost like a nice little butterfly that comes and goes, because we're not joyful all the time, but we can choose to be happy all the time. And that's how I differentiate from happiness and joy. It's that joy is kind of like the little spark here and there, and happiness is the state of being.
And if you look back on your life, and if you would have a magic wand and you'd be able to change something, would you change anything? And what would that be?
I would not change anything. And I know everybody's gasping because some of the stuff in my book is pretty rough. But if I changed anything, it would change the trajectory of what my life is now. And so I think just the way that everything happened for a reason. And it happened in, a correlative way of events that got me to where I was. So in my mind, I keep telling myself, this is how it was supposed to be. Joy and happiness is not linear. It's never linear. And I think that's very powerful when we tell ourselves that life, a series of events and a series of decisions. And based on our decisions in life, it changes the trajectory of our entire world. So if you think about it, it's kind of scary. So no, I would not change anything. The pain, the fear, getting blacklisted from the government, I would not change anything.
What was the moment that brought the most awe in your life?
So it was the moment when my husband told me that him and his family had been part of the Mexican cartel. That probably sticks out the most. And for those that don't know, I had been working for the government for 15 years when he told me this.
How did that moment of awe or surprise, immense surprise, and surprise can actually lead to positive emotions or negative emotions. So this was evidently a moment of shock. How did that shift your relationship with him?
Obviously, we ended up divorcing, but what I always like to share with people, because I really want them to think about this, in that moment, my reaction was I wanted to kill him. And I thought about it. The idea crossed my mind in that moment. But then I calmed myself down and I had a conversation with myself. It lasted a whole probably second where I said, do what you do best. You are a world-class interrogator. Calm down, separate wife from your expertise and interrogate him. So for the next 2 hours, I sat down, I looked at him, and I said, tell me more. And for 2 hours, he told me everything. And I tell people, as shocking as this moment was, this was the point in our 10-year marriage where he was being the most authentic. And I was self-developed enough and compassionate enough to understand that he also had a story. And my book triggered him to want to tell me his story, his traumas and his childhood. And for those that don't know, he grew up in the cartel. He was a child of the cartel. And so here's my husband telling me what he had gone through as a child and what he had dealt with. And so I had to look at him as somebody that I didn't know. Really, at this point, I felt like I didn't know him. But because I was able to have that authenticity from him, I was able to forgive him. And because of that interaction, obviously we divorced, but we do have children. We do have a really good co-parenting relationship despite everything that happened. And people think it's crazy, but what people don't understand is you get to choose. You get to choose how you process information and how it affects you. And so I chose to forgive him and I chose to have compassion for him. Even though he lied for 10 years, I still divorced him and I ended our relationship. But in that moment, I was able to understand that he also went through some traumatic events. And reading my traumatic events in my book triggered him to want to tell me his truth. And I think that's very powerful. If the book never became a bestseller, if I never landed a movie deal, the one thing that it did do is allow him to be free and tell me his story. So that alone to me is a win.
And now as you look forward, you've shared a lot about your past. What are some aspirations that you have for yourself and some wonderful things that you envision creating?
Again, manifestation, right? We're throwing it out into existence, into the universe. The universe is listening. So I just got published on Forbes, and I'm so privileged and I'm so grateful for Forbes because they really are pushing my signature speech with the power of forgiveness. So now I actually have to pick, and Andrea, you can help me with this one. I actually have to pick what TEDx I am going to be sharing my power of forgiveness speech, because after Forbes came out, everybody started coming at me saying, come do my event. So I actually have to sit down and pick the one that I feel is going to make the most impact in the world. So my speaking career has definitely taken off now. I'm really just open to doing a lot of speaking engagement for women empowerment, mental health, and the minority population. I am a Latina that was working for the government. So off that, it was very traumatic. So now I'm focusing on speaking. Obviously, I'm an executive producer to my own project, and I'm actually going to be also producing other people's films. I did create a course teaching other authors how to become executive producers, just the same way I did it, how to pitch to Hollywood, how to build connections and communication and relationships in Hollywood. So I am going to be throwing myself into that. And then really the writing has always been therapy for me. So I'm working on book 2 and just continuing to be a great mother and inspiration to my kids and hoping that I can just juggle all this at the same time.
I'm sure you will do a brilliant job and you will continue shining with all your beautiful projects. So Angelica, it's been such a pleasure to speak with you today. Congratulations on all your wonderful achievements. You're really a true inspiration. Everything you have shared and the experiences that are just so strikingly profound that have brought a strength within you that is incredible and have really propelled you to completely new horizons, which is really beautiful to see. So congratulations once again, and I wish you continued success moving forward.
Thank you so much.